After a 9-4 season in which many fans consider to be disappointing, Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide look to bounce back in 2025. Here are 8 things Alabama must do to make the playoff and win it all next season. Stick around. This is Way Offsides. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. Welcome to a Way Offsides pop-up. I'm going to try to do the bubbles for those of you who have been around for a while. Before we get started, if you love Alabama football, if you're excited about what Alabama is going to do in 2025, do me a couple of favors. The first thing is type Roll Tide in the comments below. The second one is hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do all the things. We love making this content for you guys, but the more of you that are subscribed and share and engage and interact, the more content we can make. So do all those things, and we'll be your best friend. This is your source for the funniest and best college football commentary out there. We are not insiders. We do know some people, and we get some information sometimes, but we're mostly here for entertainment value. And to be the voice of the fans. We feel the same things you feel, especially after this lackluster season, I would say. Really, it wasn't a bad season at all, considering everything that went down. The great Nick Saban retires. Alabama loses 50 players to the NFL, to graduation, and the transfer portal. Brand new head coach comes in. Alabama goes 9-4. My issue isn't with Alabama's record. It's with who Alabama lost to and how they lost. Obviously, those losses came to a couple of 6-6 teams, and then a Tennessee team who showed in the playoff that they had no business beating Alabama, whether the game was in Neyland or not. I'm still convinced to this day that Alabama beat themselves in that Tennessee game. But all that to say, Alabama's poised to be very, very good in 2025. We just did a video talking about the expectation for Alabama's defense next year. Alabama finished the regular season and I guess you could say the postseason with the number 1 overall defense in college football if you're ranking them by total defense. So Alabama's also returning a lot of talent there. They're returning a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball as well supplementing. They're bringing in the number 2 class, which is insane to think about Alabama finishing with the number 2 class the same year that Nick Saban retires. But it got me thinking. I read an article today from Saturday Down South, and it got me thinking, what does Alabama have to do to make the 12-team playoff? Not just make it, but win it all in 2025. The talent's going to be there, possibly more talent on the roster than we had this season. So what does Alabama need to do? Some of these things are very obvious. Some of them, I think, maybe things you haven't thought about. So we're going to break them down. We're going to say, without further ado, we're going to go into 8 things Alabama must do in 2025 to make the playoff and win the whole damn thing. So let's start. Number 8, I'll count backwards in terms of importance here. Number 8, stop the inside pass. Alabama's defense, as good as they were, struggled to stop anything that happened through the air inside, specifically against Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, and then we saw it again against Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma. Alabama could not stop that option-style offense with the little inside shovel passes, or the running QBs. We've seen this before. Alabama struggled with this. Nick Saban struggled with this a few years ago against Georgia State? I can't remember. Anyway, they ran through our ass like shit through a 10-form statement. That was because Alabama just got demolished on the ground. I think they gave up like 200-something yards that game. I'm having a brain fog and can't remember who it was against. So please tell me in the comments. I know you will. But Alabama's defense, as good as they were in the secondary, looked suspect in the middle last year. So I fully expect that to be addressed, starting with the defensive line and then at the next level, the linebacker position. Now, that's going to be harder said than done because you don't lose a guy like Jihad Campbell and not fill it. That's not to say Alabama doesn't have a ton of talent. They're more talented at the linebacker position than most programs in the country. So they can fill it. It's just going to take them a couple of weeks to fill that out. So hopefully they get that figured out before they play Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia again in 2025. Number 7, spread the wealth. Now listen, I am a humongous Ryan Williams fan. I absolutely love Ryan Williams. He's only 17 years old. But Alabama, it was Ryan Williams or bust. I think towards the end of the season, specifically in the Iron Bowl and then in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Michigan, you saw them target guys like Jeremy Bernard a little more, but still Alabama relied on Ryan Williams in the big play way too much. And that could be a product of the offensive coordinator, or it could have just been Jalen Milroe's inability to read a defense, or it even could have been the offensive line not giving Jalen Milroe enough time to go through his progressions. That's for you to decide. But chunking the ball up in the air 40 yards and trying to hit Ryan Williams for a miraculous play, it worked against Georgia, but it's not going to work every single time. I don't care how good of a wide receiver you are. It doesn't work every time. So I want to see Alabama distribute that well throughout their wide receiving core a little more. I also think that would help. Alabama's, in the past 3 seasons, has seen the majority of their starting wide receivers hit the portal. And yes, in the NIL period, that is something that's going to happen. But at the same time, some of that is because the ball isn't being evenly distributed. So I would love to see Alabama address that offensively moving forward into 2025. Next on the list, open the playbook. And this could potentially contribute a little bit to spreading the wealth. But opening the playbook, Kalen DeBoer pretty much, without saying it, said that Alabama was kind of handicapped and limited in what they could do offensively. They're trying to fit square pieces into a round hole. They don't have the guys that they necessarily want to run this offense. You had the separation of Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb there. We'll see if there's a reunion. Fingers crossed. We'll see. But opening the playbook, Alabama was very limited in what they could and couldn't do offensively. I think that also lends itself to the underutilization of the running backs. So I would like to see Alabama get a little more creative. We know that DeBoer can be very creative when he has a quarterback who can do it. We saw that at Washington with Michael Penix Jr. Now he's got 2 of his guys coming in. Well, one of his guys, his choices coming in, and then, of course, Austin Mack is there. A lot of people think it might be Ty Simpson's show. I think Ty Simpson is more than capable of opening that up. He's pretty mobile. Of course, he's not as mobile on the ground as a Jalen Milroe type guy, but I think Ty could run that offense, especially being the fact that it's year 2. Moving on. Back to the defensive side of the ball, I want to see Alabama, specifically Tim Keenan, finish QB pressures. Alabama, especially towards the second half of the season, they got very aggressive in their blitzes, very aggressive in how they pursued quarterbacks. But there was this, it was almost like the plays would stall, and whether it was a linebacker, corner blitz, whatever, even the deep down lineman or D lineman, they could not finish the play a lot of the time. Alabama's secondary, this new defense is really built to help out the secondary. But when you have these guys like a Tim Keenan, James Smith looked great against Michigan, and he's going to be a bright spot next year. But you want to see them really get to the quarterback and finish a lot of these plays. Tim Keenan specifically, I don't know if he's a little bit too slow or he's a little bit oversized, but a lot of times last season, he was putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, but just couldn't finish. And we're in a day and age where quarterbacks pressure sometimes isn't enough to keep them from making the big play. Johnny Manziel is a great example of that. You could pressure that kid all day long, and he was still pulling miraculous plays out of his butt. So, yeah, I would love to see Alabama finish with these QB pressures and get to the quarterback a lot more often. Moving on, better judgment pre-snap from the quarterback position. This was something that I think Milroe probably struggled with. Some of this is just my opinion here. I could be wrong. I don't know Jalen Milroe. I'm not his offensive coordinator. I'm not his head coach. But I do think just based off of what we saw, identifying coverages, identifying blitz, Milroe potentially struggled with some of those things. And so I would love to see a quarterback back there who's able to make those reads beforehand, adjust when he needs to adjust, or go down his receiving tree based off of where the pressure's coming from. Milroe did it sometimes, but he didn't do it consistently. And so I want a quarterback who can do that consistently. Moving on, discipline. I think this is something all Alabama fans can agree on. For those of you who are the school of thought that we should get used to Kalen DeBoer, absolutely we should. We should get used to him as the head coach. He's not going to do anything like Nick Saban. However, a lot of Alabama's success came from the standard that Nick Saban put in place. And that standard wasn't just for himself or the players. He projected that standard onto the fan base as well. You guys remember him complaining about fans leaving games early and how we need to be there and be loud and affect the environment. What happened? Fans started staying. So we expect that same standard to be upheld on the field, even though he's not there as the head coach. So in terms of discipline, a lot of I go back to the 4th and 1 play where I know it was Ryan Williams. I think the other guy might have been Jeremy Bernard shooting the fake J and not picking up the first down. Like that kind of stuff. Like absolutely not. We don't want to see that. Get up, line up, and make a play. That's what we want. Do your job. You've got one job. Do it. Right? Do it. There was some undisciplined stuff that happened after plays. I think we'd like to see that cleaned up. You could contribute that to just being a dog and a competitor. I think we like that, but it got a little out of hand sometimes, and it wasn't necessarily up to that Alabama standard that we are all used to and that I think we unapologetically believe should carry on past Nick Saban's tenure as the head coach at Alabama, because that's what made Alabama successful. And there were remnants of that in the past when Alabama was successful under Gene Stallings and Bear Bryant as well. Next on the list, Maulers. I want to see Maulers on that offensive line. We had a couple of them this season. The offensive line play was much better compared to 2023 and 2022, I think. But there were still some guys on the line. Elijah Pritchett was one of them that struggled. He's now gone. He's transferred out. I believe he committed to Nebraska. And so God help Team U, Patrick Mahomes up there. But just kidding. Best of luck to the young man. I hope he has a great career and is a first-round draft pick. But as for the guys who are in Tuscaloosa or coming into Tuscaloosa under Coach Cap, or not to start a rumor, but if Ryan Grubb were to come back and bring Coach Huff with him, whomever, that offensive line isn't as I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, because it wasn't terrible all season, especially considering the past 2 seasons, but the offensive line wasn't, I guess, up to the standard that we have at Alabama. And so we have a very storied history of very good offensive linemen, and we would like to see that continue, not only because we don't want to see our quarterback under constant pressure, but we want to be able to run the ball. That is Alabama football, right? That is our brand. Alabama did not do a good job of that this season. To be honest, they haven't done a great job of it the last couple of seasons because they've relied so much on these quarterbacks. Bryce Young is an example of that. So is Jalen Milroe. And last but not least, but before we get there, I want you to tell me in the comments, go to the comments right now, tell me what you think Alabama needs to do to be successful in 2025. Also, while you're doing that, again, and I know you're going to like, listen, Cotton, you keep telling us. Well, I'm going to keep telling you because again, we rely on you guys. So make sure you are doing all the things, liking, subscribing, following. We have several shows that we do every week. We've kind of been slacking with the holidays, but we're getting back on track with our regular weekly show. We're bringing After Dark back this week. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know After Dark is kind of it. After Dark's where you want to be. It's a good show. A lot of fun. Me, Chris, Jeff, Bill from Cube. I don't know if I was supposed to say that, but I said it anyway. Bill is out of the country, but he still is devoting himself to Way Offsides. Also, before we get to number one, really, I'll be fast here. For those of you who are content creators, whether you have a website, a blog, a YouTube channel, if you do AI art or anything like that, if you're a recruiting insider and you're looking for an organization, for a group of like-minded individuals to help you build a brand, as well as you're willing to work with others to lift up and build a brand, we have a collaboration for you. The WOSN, the Way Offside Sport Network, has officially launched, and this is something that you can be a part of. And it's as simple as emailing us at wayoffsides@gmail.com. That's Way Offsides with 4 A's, not 3, not 5. 3's not enough, 5's too many. 4, just like in Alabama, wayoffsides@gmail.com. You can reach out to us. Let us know what your platform is. Maybe it's TikTok, who knows? Maybe it's Instagram. Maybe you're a photographer. Maybe you want to write. Maybe you just want to be on the show with us. We love to have guests all the time. So if that's you, reach out. But finally, number one on my list that I think Alabama must do to make the playoff and win another national championship in 2025 is continue to build on a very strong defensive year. We all know the quarterback play's got to be better, right? That's a given. That's why it's not on the list. We know the quarterback play has to be better. But defensively, Alabama quietly had an under-the-radar year with a secondary that was young and lost so much talent. And this Kane Womack defense is built to highlight corners and safeties. It really is. That forcing turnovers, being aggressive, being fast. I want to see Alabama build on that. And if they can get the quarterback pressure part of it down and just continue to develop with these exotic blitzes that they're running, and I really think this is the defensive style that Nick Saban was moving towards anyway, or wanted to move towards anyhow. So I really do think that if Alabama can put a defensive product on the field similar to what they did this year, and I don't think they're going to have a problem with that. Damani Jackson's coming back. Tim Keenan's coming back. Dante Lawson's coming back. Keon Sabb's coming back. You got a lot of guys coming back. I think Alabama can definitely make the 12-team playoff next season, despite the schedule. But I think that they could have a legitimate shot at winning the whole damn thing. That is going to do it, folks. Tell me what I missed, what I didn't say, what you liked, what you didn't like. Be sure to put it down there in the comment section. Roast me, whatever you need to do to feel better and sleep at night. I am no longer living in Alabama, but for those of you who are, especially up in North Alabama, stay warm. Make sure you got everything you need. A really nasty winter storm on the way. But until next time, you know the drill. Say your prayers, wash your hands, read your Bibles, horns down, beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Roll